Hello, everybody. This week we are talking about the issue of how college students develop a sense of their own sexuality over time. Now, there are lots of words that have become very difficult to define because of double meanings or evolving meanings, and I want to talk about a couple of those, and I'll talk about more of those in a video after this that deals more with gender and gender identity. Today we're talking about sexual identity. But one of the problems with the English language is the same word, sex, refers to both the act of some type of activity between people that is arousing, you know what I mean. And then it is also used to refer to whether one is biologically male or female. And so I think that has led to a lot of confusion among folks. And so I do my best to speak as plainly as I can about whether I mean biological sex, whether I mean sexual relations, because I think our language impedes our understanding on a lot of these issues. So generally speaking, biological sex refers to biological differences, body type differences, differences in muscle mass, XY chromosome versus XX chromosome, various different body types and features and parts and those sorts of things. So that is what sex biologically will refer to. Now, gender has a very disparate definition from whether you're talking to whomever, but generally speaking, sociologists, when they study gender, will talk about it as the culturally shaped expression of sexual differences. Nancy Evans and her colleagues defined it very much in that way. So a lot of people will talk about gender as being the cultural way that men or women are supposed to behave, and some men behave in accordance with cultural expectations of men. Some men behave in a way that isn't necessarily in line with cultural expectations for men, and the same for women as well. So just to give you an idea a little bit there, some people use the word gender when they really mean sex, and so that can get complicated. And some of the very early research on gender was done by Sandra Bem back in the 70s, and then a lot longer than that as well. She looked at many different issues, and we'll talk about that more when I talk about gender identity, but she took a look at gender and as people being either strong on masculine traits and low on feminine traits, or the opposite, strong on feminine traits, low on masculine traits, strong on both masculine and feminine traits, or weak on both, and not having a lot of either. So she came up with a typology of masculine, feminine, androgynous, undifferentiated. So lots of different ways to look at gender. I would encourage you at some point, if you're interested, to look up Sandra Bem's writings. I think they're they're foundational and they're interesting for us to learn from. Now, this particular week, we're going to study different theories on how people develop as sexual beings. And I have some readings for you that are in your text, and they deal with the sexual development of both heterosexual, homosexual students. Not a lot is written out there on bisexual students, and I believe a little bit of that is in the reading, but it's a less researched area. And I want to make sure, as always, to give you various points of view and various thoughts on that. So you have a couple of different authors who will describe different theories of sexual identity development in your readings. The most popular one out there was by Vivian Cass, and she developed sort of a 6-stage developmental process for gay men, and she worked in Australia. And her theory came from her clients. She's a therapist who came to talk to her because they were struggling with issues of sexual identity. And she found a very predictable set of stages that they go through. One way to remember them, a little acronym, is CC-TAPS: confusion, comparison, tolerance, acceptance, pride, and synthesis. CC-TAPS being the first letters of each of those words. One critique of her theory is that she only studied men who were in therapy who had some conflict about their sexual identity or were trying to come to terms with that. Well, that leaves out men who didn't go to therapy or who didn't see the need for that, regardless of what their orientation might be. So there is a limited sample there, and of course it's in Australia, which would have, I think, one step away from relevance for people in the United States. But still, it's a widely used theory. There's another one from Degeli. It looks like Duogeli, but I believe the pronunciation is Degeli. And Degeli came up with more processes rather than stages, and so he looked at identity development in that way. So I would encourage you to read this week up on sexual identity with an open mind to the theories, but not only an open mind, a critical mind. So that as we discuss these issues, you can do so from hearing various different points of view and talking through what seems to make sense to you, what questions do you have about the theories and the authors who are stating different things, and how can we understand this very complex way of developing for many different people who have many different attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. So I hope you do enjoy it, and we'll have a great conversation.